We're here at Eastern Michigan University with one of my favorite people, Shirley Spork. Shirley is a co-founder of the LPGA and also is an EMU alumna, having spent her undergraduate career at EMU. And what we'd like to do today is talk a little bit about EMU and some of your memories of the times you've had here. And I think I'd like to start, you have kind of a cute story about how you got to EMU.
Well, that's really a story because being introduced to the game of golf and coming into the game, beginning to play, I heard, and when I went to high school, I knew there was a WPGA, which was a women's pro golf tour, and it was very functional in the year 1946 and 7 and 8. And I was in high school, or excuse me, I was out of high school, but I heard about it, and then it went defunct, and then there was no pro tour. Because in high school, I dreamed about being a golf pro. Since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a golf pro. And I wanted to be like Patty Berg and Babe Zaharias. But we moved from where I started to play golf back into the city, into an apartment building, and the people that lived upstairs, the daughter went to Eastern Michigan, which was Michigan State Normal Teachers College, and her mother convinced my mom and dad that I should go to college. So I sort of didn't want to go to college. I wanted to be a pro, but there was no pro, so I went to college. So when I got to college, of course, golf was limited, seasonal. You know, you couldn't play year-round. And in the winter, in the snowdrifts, walking from Goodison Hall to the old gym over by the water tower, I took my golf clubs through the snow. Everybody thought I was crazy, and I went in a little room where they did wrestling, and they had wrestling mats, and I hooked them on the wall, and I hit balls against those mats to keep my game up for coming in for the competition in the summer. And also, being a phys ed major, I did all sports left-handed, because I felt that the left side had to get strong because it was the leading side in the golf swing. So I did bowling, badminton, baseball, all left-handed. I was kind of a klutz at it, but I wanted to be a golfer. We didn't have trainers, but I knew that reading about in instruction books about the golf game that you had to be strong with the left side. So I decided I had to develop my left side, so I did all these sports left-handed. That was one thing, and the other thing about Eastern Michigan, for swimming, the old gymnasium for the girls, we had to go through the locker room and walk around this boiler on a little narrow path to get into the pool. The men's side, their gym and they just got in real easy, but we had to walk along this boiler that was really hot. I remember that. And then to pass life-saving, you had to swim 25 lengths of the pool. That was one of the things. And I've never been around water, and it was one of the hardest things. And to dive down in the water and catch that brick, and I just worked and worked and worked. But I did pass it. And wonderful thing about school was Bingo Brown, is that the right name?
I think so.
Was the dean of men. And they, in our curriculum, you had to take organic chemistry. And every year they kept saying, well, they're going to take it out of the curriculum, so we'll wait till we get to the next year and it'll be out of there and we won't have to take it. But I got to be a senior and it was still in the program, and I thought, oh man, I've got to pass that to graduate. So I went to Bingo Brown and I said, I'm having a terrible time with that, that course. And he said, Shirley, when you hit it in a bunker and you have a buried lie, you have to dig in there and get it out. And that's the answer he gave me.
Wow.
He was really nice, and he wrote some nice letters to me when I went on the tour. We corresponded for quite a time. Another thing was Dr. Lloyd Oles, who was proficient in swimming prior to going to World War II, and then he was in World War II. But not many people know that he invented the referee's striped shirt.
Oh, right.
He's the referee. He invented the shirt that they wear to referee football, baseball with the stripes.
Zebra stripes.
Because he was an official in swimming in the Olympics, official, and he designed that. Yeah, that was an interesting story. Living in the dorm, it was after World War II and all the GI Bill was in effect, so all the boys were 2 to 4 years older than we were, coming back to school. They had a men's golf team, but no ladies golf team. To practice, I was allowed and offered a courtesy membership at Washtenaw Country Club. They allowed me to go out there and practice and play. And my real thought was on the golf game, and come time for final exams, and they were playing a tournament at Oakland Hills, and I was able to get the professor in biology to come at 6 in the morning to give me my blue book exam so I could get in the car and go play in the golf tournament at Oakland Hills. So those are fond memories of how.
Were you the only woman at the time who was a golfer, or were there other women who were interested in golf?
At school? Oh no, there were no one was interested. Plus the fact that you weren't supposed to excel. You were not supposed to excel as an individual sport. You were supposed to do intramurals. That was the era of intramural sports for girls, not to individual sports. So to play in the intercollegiate tournament, we had a substitute teacher. Her last name was Capone. I can't remember her first name, but her last name was Capone. And I had her sign my application. I paid my own way to go to Ohio State to play in the intercollegiate, and won it, and came back. And of course, women's PE would not honor me because you're not supposed to excel in individual sports. So the men's department gave me a jacket with a little emblem on, not an E, just a little emblem that said National Intercollegiate Champion. And that's how you come into the act, I think, when your research.
I did. I researched, wanted to find out who Shirley Spork was, and found out that you won that tournament and was so impressed. It was amazing. I can't imagine how you created opportunities.
Well, I think we all did this. When I went to the intercollegiate tournament, there was only 2 or 3 teams being, 2 or 3 individuals there who went to a school that taught golf, like Rollins. A lot of the wealthy families that could send their kids to a resort area, they went to Rollins College, and they had a golf team. And Stetson University in Florida had a golf team. And that's the only 2 that I can remember having a team. And most of the people who competed, it was an individual, it was match play. There was no team effort, it was match play. And Gladys Palmer, who was the head of the PE department at Ohio State, is the one that put the tournament on. She was a golfer. She loved golf, and she was the one that brought it back into existence because it had been played 2 years prior to 2 years prior to World War II, and then it was defunct during World War II, and then it restarted in 1947.
So while you were a student at EMU, you lived on campus all 4 years.
Yeah, I lived at the dorm, Goodison dorm, and that was a rather new dorm, and it was built for, you had a study room and a bedroom, and it was built for two, but there were four, because they put double beds in there. So to study, you had to go over to the library or not study at all. And things that we did is, of course, you used to always go across campus to Ted's drugstore. That was a place to meet, but that was a time when they started, Coca-Cola started machines that you could put your money in and get a Coke. So my idea was to not have to go all the way around campus, just have in the rec room, have a Coke machine. Yeah. So I went to the president of the university, his name was Elliot, and convinced him that we should have a Coke machine in our dorm. And that was the first Coke machine on campus.
I think that's great. You know, Eastern has a reputation for really being listening to its students, and it sounds like they listened to its students back then too.
They surely did. They surely did. And football games, we always, we'd all go to the football games, and there wasn't much more activity because I went home almost every weekend. So I could play golf.
Now, did you have a car while you were on campus too?
Well, luckily, I had the very first 10-year-old car at Goodison dorm. I had the only car, and its name was Pearl, and everybody watched Pearl. I parked it under a big oak tree right by the dorm there, and to make my spending money, I refereed basketball, and in the winter I would drive out to these little towns and referee a basketball game, and come back and have to ring the doorbell and ask the house mother to let me in, because they locked the doors at night in the dorm. You had to be in at a certain time during the week, and there was a different time on weekends. But the house mother locked the door, and I'd have to ring the bell and wake her up, and she didn't like that very much. But I had to get permission to do this. I don't know who I asked. I can't remember who I asked to get the permission to do what I was doing. And so they helped me make my own spending money, and that was big time. I mean, I think I got $15. That was a lot of money. And I loved to referee basketball games and coach. I coached a church team to make spending money. And little Pearl, my car, we'd take to play basketball. We'd get five people and two basketballs in the car to go out and play a basketball game with some high school or something. And I did my student teaching, not at Lincoln. Lincoln was a student teaching, but there was a school out of town, and you had to take a bus out there, and you had to teach a certain subject, and they allowed me to build a little golf course. So I taught them golf as my subject. And you used a plastic ball. It didn't go far, and I could make little 9 holes around the football field.
Incredible.
So I did that also at Eastern on their football field. I made a course go around the football field.
Oh my goodness.
And a dog leg, and it would be out of bounds if you went on the football field.
So you played a lot of sports, but golf was always it. So EMU at Michigan State Normal College was known as a teacher's college. So when you graduated from Michigan State Normal, you were a teacher.
I had my teaching degree, and because I wanted to play golf, I first signed as a substitute teacher, so I could kind of teach a little and then have time to do my golf. And by happenstance, I went to be a substitute teacher, and I replaced a teacher who was pregnant and wasn't coming back. So I stayed on and taught the whole season there, and excuse me. And then when the school year was over for summer, I was able to then go to Chicago, and that's where I met Babe Zaharias. And she was the head golf professional at Skycrest, and she wanted competition, and that's where I turned pro. And she, of course, said, "Why don't you join us?" And I asked her how you become a pro, and she came and hit me on the head and said, "You're a pro, go tell them on the tee." So that's how I turned pro. I didn't go to play. They didn't have any players school or anything like that, and they didn't have a tour. Babe was just trying to get a group together and then start the tour. So in that tournament, which was the Women's Western Open, it's still in existence today, the Women's Western Golf Association. They had a little strip of area right over here where Louise Suggs and Patty Berg and Babe and the people who had been in the WPGA were allowed to play. The tournament was really big amateur tournament, but they allowed this little section. So Marilyn Smith and I played as a professional in that tournament, and there were, I think, 10 of us, and the wind blew 60 miles an hour, and as you walked to the green, the ball would roll off the green, and Marilyn and I were playing with Louise Suggs. And on one hole, when I took the club back, I lost my balance, and I whiffed the ball, and Marilyn and I laughed, and Louise didn't like us making the fun out of it. And the only person that broke 80 was Louise Suggs, and she shot 78, and we shot 90. That was the very first tournament as a professional, we shot 90. Unreal. And then that fall, and then I committed myself to teach at Bowling Green State University. And that fall, that's when we signed the charter, and the tour started in January, and I'm teaching school at Bowling Green, so I would get on a plane. I only taught Monday through Thursday. So I'd get on a plane at Willow Run to fly to Florida to play in the first LPGA tournaments, and without a practice round. I'd just play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get back on a plane, back to Bowling Green and teach, and then when the next tournament came in Florida, the first 3 tournaments were in Florida. I did the same thing, and Marilyn gave me her notes. So that's not the way to turn pro and try to play on the tour. So as summer came, I decided not to teach anymore at Bowling Green, and I decided I wanted to be a full-time tour player. And so along with that, we had 11 tournaments, and then we had, as we traveled, we convinced the low handicap women in the area where we were to join us because we didn't have enough players. Why would anybody come out and just watch 11 people play on the golf course? And they had to get sponsors and all that. So from that point on, as we traveled, we were like a tumbleweed, gathering momentum and gathering players. Mm-hmm. So, and then when they played as an amateur, we would try to convince them to become a pro and join us. So that went on for a few years, and being a teacher and having my teaching credentials, I felt that we should have a teaching division in the LPGA. And I brought it up for vote for 3 consecutive years. It did not pass. And the reason they voted against it, they felt that that would take people away from their tour. And finally, on the last vote, last attempt, in 1959, it passed by one vote. And that's how the LPGA teaching division got started.
So you co-founded that.
And I co-founded that with Marilyn Smith, Barbara Rotvig, and Betty Hicks. And then we continued on having national golf schools for teachers. And the first one was at the University of Michigan, and the second was at the University of Michigan. And that way we were beginning to teach individuals how to teach the game.
So really you took your skills from Eastern Michigan University and put them to work with the LPGA.
Right. And because of my background, I was even so associated with Ellen Griffin from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And from that point on, we began to establish the teaching division, and today it's over 1,700 teachers, and we have 6 sections of the country it's divided, and also we have a global, international section that's functioning tremendously. I think they have over 50, going on to 100 Asian teachers in our, coming up through the apprentice and going into the area. And so we're really global, we're truly global. And I'm very honored to have been able to be part of the beginning of it. Absolutely. And see how well it's grown.
Does every LPGA club professional have a teaching credential that they have gone through the teaching program?
They have to go through apprentice, B, A, and then after 10 years and you've given service back to the community, you have to write a thesis, and then you can become a master pro. And I have a tournament where I live out west in the desert area, the Coachella Valley, Palm Desert, Palm Springs, and I raise funds for and honor the master pros. In our section, we have 14 master pros, and each year I'm honoring 2. And at our Pro-Am, we raised money for Eastern Michigan, the Shirley Spork, Shirley G. Spork Women's Golf Endowment. And we're happy that you and your husband started that for me. And today it's up to 80,000, and we hope by next year to have 100,000 in that account. So they can draw 4% out every year and use it for the golf. And because of that, doing all that, all of a sudden this year, here I am back at Eastern, and honored to have the Shirley Spork Invitational with 10 teams are out there today playing.
Well, thank you, Shirley. It's been wonderful talking with you about some of the early opportunities.
But you forget I have my E now.
You do have
Not this little E, I got a big E.
That's right. That's right. You did get your letter 2 years ago, right? Finally.
67 years later, I got it.
Long awaited, but much deserved.
Right.
Thank you so much, Shirley. It's been a pleasure talking with you.